HK slap at one time. Hey y'all, my name's Trent, and I like guns and shit. Today we're going to be talking about Spanish bayonets and the rifles they go on. All of the rifles I'm about to show you guys are going to have their own independent videos coming up with some range content, so stay tuned for that. So first up in our Spanish selection, we have a 1916 Spanish Mauser. Now originally these were chambered in 7x57 Mauser, also called 7mm or 7 Mauser. I don't have an actual period correct long bayonet for this one, but I do have an 1891 Argentine Mauser bayonet, and it fits it like it was made for it. So 9 times out of 10, you will see my 1916 Spanish Mauser with the 1891 Argentine pattern bayonet for it. Now, the Spanish bayonet that is originally designed for the 1916 is about the same size. And we'll talk a little bit about why these Mauser bayonets can be compatible with other Mauser patterns. The next Spanish rifle we have on our list is the 1943 Spanish Mauser, which is a copy of the German K98. Now, before I put a bayonet on it, I want to show you guys this right here. So most of your K98 pattern Mausers are going to have a traditional K98 lug, but the Spanish Mausers are often fitted with an adapter to take the older style Mauser pattern bayonets. You'll most frequently find 1943 Spanish Mausers with a 1941 Spanish Bolo bayonet. Now that's not the only bayonet that can fit this one with this adapter on there. With this Mauser pattern bayonet adapter, you can also fit short sword types like the 1891 Argentine pattern. Really give it some reach. Now, the next rifle we're going to talk about, I'm very excited to show you guys. This is called a Spanish FR8 Mauser. I'll do a deep dive into the history of this rifle and why it exists and why it looks so familiar. If from this half backwards it looks like a Spanish M43 Mauser, that's because that's what it used to be. You see, in 1950, when Spain wanted to get into the NATO game, they had to have a rifle that would meet the NATO qualifications. So they came out with a SETME, which we're going to talk about here in a second. They quickly realized that SETMEs were very expensive, so they decided to issue these modified Spanish M43 Mausers to their rear echelon type troops for training purposes. The bayonet that goes on this one is the FR8 pattern bayonet. Now, something you might have noticed with the last two bayonets I showed is that they look like they've been over sharpened due to these inward caving bellies on the blades. Ordinarily, you'd be correct. However, these are called Bolo pattern blades, and Spain did these deliberately, in theory giving it better chopping capabilities. So that's why they look like that. The last rifle we're going to talk about today is a Spanish SETME, also known as the predecessor to the H&K G3. Roller delayed blowback 7.62x51. This thing's awesome. The bayonet that goes on this one is a SETME C bayonet. And you might say, well, Trent, that SETME C bayonet looks suspiciously similar to the FR8 bayonet you just showed us. Well, that's because, in no uncertain terms, it's the exact same bayonet. See, part of Spain modifying the M43 Mausers into an FR8, they decided to make it have the same bayonet lug as the SETME. You got an HK slap at one time. Now earlier I referenced a bayonet adapter for the Spanish M43 Mauser. Underneath the silver piece you can see a traditional style K98 lug, as is also present on the Yugo M48 pattern. So before this adapter is put in place, it would take K98 bayonets like the Yugo pattern bayonet, and with the adapter in place, it'll take the other kind of Mauser pattern bayonet. Now, to differentiate between the two Mauser pattern bayonets, I like to call them long crossguard and short guard. Because in the longer crossguard, the crossguard is, get this, a little bit longer. In the short crossguard, the muzzle ring is damn near touching the spine of the blade. In the long crossguard pattern, the muzzle ring is a good distance out. So to summarize, on something like this M43 pattern, before you put the adapter on, it'll take the shorter crossguard pattern of bayonet. After you put the bayonet adapter on there, you want to use the long pattern. Now, something that is worth mentioning when you're talking about the FR8 and the Spanish SETME C is that while they take the same bayonets and lugs, they're actually oriented differently on the end of the rifles. On the FR8 rifle, it's oriented with the blade facing downward at the bottom of the barrel. It's the exact opposite on the SETME C. The blade rests on top of the barrel and the cutting edge is oriented upward. Since I mentioned the difference between the short crossguard and the long crossguard pattern Mauser bayonets, I thought I'd go ahead and show you just how translatable they are. I don't know if that's the correct term there, but by God, it's what I'm going with. So here's the 1941 pattern Bolo bayonet, and we're going to stick it on the 1916 Spanish. Likewise, we're going to take the 1891 pattern Argentine and put it on the M43. They fit as if they're made for each other, and they kind of are. But the Spanish pieces aren't the only ones that are compatible that way. So I'm going to pop this one off the 1916. This is a 1935 pattern Turkish Mauser bayonet. Like it's made for it. The reason I bothered to bring up the compatibility of different pattern Mauser bayonets is if you're like me and you've got a rifle that can take a bayonet, you want to put a damn bayonet on it. So say you get a 1943 Spanish Mauser bayonet and you're having a hard time finding the 1941 pattern Bolo blade, you can take another longer crossguard pattern Mauser bayonet, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to fit with no issue whatsoever. So you can take your 1891 pattern Argentine Mauser bayonets and put them on your 1943 Spanish. Or you can take your 1936 pattern bayonet and stick it on your 1916 Spanish Mauser. And I know for a fact there's a good amount of those combinations that I haven't mentioned because that video would take 10 freaking minutes just to get through all the different combinations of Mausers and Mauser bayonets you can put on them. But I figured I'd put that out there for any collector that's hunting for a bayonet for their new milsurp piece. I hope we all learned something today. Y'all have a good one. And remember, a rifle without a bayonet is pointless.